Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Cult of SMMI. I am your host, Scott Mort. I had something very different planned this week. I was out of material, quite honestly. Mike's conversation with me was done. Now, we do have a lot more of Mike coming up. Don't worry about that. And I had an interview scheduled with a former member of the SMMI, so was out of material. I had something planned. I thought it was important. It is something that will get done. But then I receive a message. I'm a former member of the SMMI. I want to get some things off my chest. So I spoke to Antoinette. Just a delightful woman. Just an absolutely delightful woman. And over the next 2 weeks, you're going to hear Antoinette's story. Once again, I remind you, Antoinette's story is Antoinette's story. I have no way of verifying it. I have no way of proving it untrue. So everything you hear today, and on every episode of the Cult of SMMI, falls under the vast umbrella of allegedly. And I do welcome any former or current members of the SMMI to please reach out, contact me. If your story is vastly different than what you're hearing here, please let me know. I want to hear your side of the story. If your story lines up, please let me know. I want to hear your side of the story. I want to hear all sides of the story. Without further ado, Antoinette.
Well, let me see. I was a part of the order when I was very, very much younger. I'm 51 now, so I'm old. But I was a part of the order when I was the end. Let me see. I'm going to have to do the math now. It was the end of 1989. So I was about the end of my 16th year is when I entered the postulancy of this order. And I left when I was in the novitiate at the end of 1990. Yes, at the end of or it might have been 1991 because it was January. So I guess I should start by saying I wasn't in the order. I was only in the order for a little less than 2 years. So it's not like I have some of the huge experiences of some of the other sisters that I've heard tell their story. I never got past the novitiate. I ran away when I was a novitiate, and so, I mean, I saw a lot, and I guess my story mostly, I think, highlights what everybody emphasizes when they talk to me is how young they were willing to go to find people.
Okay.
So, because I was 16 when I entered.
That is quite young to make a life-changing decision like that.
It is, and it was, I mean, just to give a backstory on me, I mean, we could talk about my youth for hours and never get to the end of it, but my parents were pretty narcissistic, and I was raised by my grandparents, and my grandfather passed away when I was 15, and my grandmother's mental health started going downhill after his death. And so I had to make a choice because my grandmother was no longer able to be my guardian. So, the danger was going back into my parents' house or, or finding an alternative. And I was, at the time that Mother Elisabetta and Sister Teresa found me, was going through the process of being emancipated. Um, so I was working with another order because I was there in New Jersey. I was in New Jersey, and I was working with another order who worked at a religious shrine. And I was working in their bookstore, as part of my discernment process, because they knew that um, I kind of wanted to be a sister. But they were going really slow with me because I was so young, even if I was going through the emancipation process. So um, one day, Mother Elizabetha and Sister Teresa came in to the bookstore, and Mother Elizabetha saw me and kind of asked for my story, and I kind of gave it to her and said that I was in the discernment process of joining the order that I was working for, you know, and they came back. Ooh, a week or two later. I don't remember because this was some years ago, but it was very quickly that they came back to the bookstore, and they stood in the corner whispering. And Sister Teresa came up to me and told me that Mother Elizabetha um, had a really strong feeling about me, and really wanted to talk to me about joining their order. Now, what I didn't know at the time is that Sister Teresa and Mother Elizabetha had also taken a sister from this order before.
Oh, so this was a pattern.
Yes, but I didn't know at the time. I was 16. These sisters weren't telling me all their secrets yet because I hadn't joined the order. And they were, we were just looking at each other and their spirituality. And now, I mean, I'm not going to go into my big sob story about my youth, but having somebody really want me and desire me enough to come back 2 or 3 times, just to make sure that I, knew that they really wanted me was, to my 16-year-old mind, um, what what I needed to hear for you to get me to do anything. Hmm?
I,
Because I had gone through my life just kind of feeling unwanted. I was kind of like a neglected child, just to put it, to make a postmark there. So, when my grandmother could no longer take care of me, and it was up to my parents, and I mean, I was very desperately trying to get away from my parents. And what I learned later, what people told me, is any order that was worth anything probably would have told me no, because I had, I wasn't joining a religious order to because I felt called by God. I was joining a religious order because I needed to get away from my parents.
I see. Now, I have to ask,
Hmm.
if slash when, and like I said, it's a big if slash when. Did did they kind of take that tension away from you? Because that is classic behavior. Give all the
Hmm.
attention in the world and remove it or threaten to remove it.
No, I think what they did was they gave me too much attention.
I see.
Because what happened was when I joined the order, when I became a postulant, I was directly under Sister Teresa. And Mother Elisabetta visited often, but she lived in Italy, you know. And what they did to me a lot, when they had discipline problems with me, because I mean, let's face it, I was a teenager, you know what I mean. So when there was discipline problems with me, they kind of good copped, bad copped me, okay? Because I also, when I was in middle school and high school, had a friend from Korea who taught me how to speak Korean. So I knew how to speak Korean. I knew how to speak a little Japanese. So Mother Elisabetta told me that that God had told her that I was going to be the one that would bring the message to Asia. I was going to be the one to be the Asian missionary that went to Asia and started the order there. So, and for a 16-year-old who had been told her whole life that she wasn't worth much, for somebody to be like, "You are worth everything to us because you are going to bring God's work to Asia." And just think, and anytime I would do something, Sister Teresa would be the bad cop, and dole out the discipline. And if it got too bad, I was put on the phone the Mother Elizabetha or Mother Elizabetha would come to America and just remind me of how important I was to God's work. So I think that, and that was, I realize now, a little bit of a manipulation, or a lot of bit of a manipulation, because they very much knew about my parents. And what I found out later was that Sister Teresa and my mother, who consequently also is named Teresa, um, talked to each other almost daily while I was there. So what ended up happening was I did eventually get the emancipation. However, before the emancipation, my mother signed over custody of me to the order. I don't know if I was under Sister Teresa or Mother Elizabeth. I don't know. But my custody was transferred to the order. And um, um, so that's how they got a hold of me, you know. In fact, I was so young that the end of the year that I joined, I had to go back and finish my confirmation in my church from home. Like they sent me back with another sister to finish my confirmation because I wasn't even confirmed in the church yet.
I see. What
So
and legally, what did that do to the original emancipation?
it pushed it forward because I had already graduated high school. I graduated high school early. Um, so I had a diploma, and I had even done some college classes because I went to some college classes while I was working with the other order. Um, so I was my job when I was in the order, even as a postulant, was I taught classes in a school. So I was a teacher. You know what I mean? At the age of 16, I was teaching third and fourth graders.
Whenever you joined the order, describe your first day going into the order.
When I went in, um, everybody was there, and it was just like they had been waiting for me. You know what I mean? And just lots of hugs, lots of kisses, lots of physical affection, um, and just making me feel like I was wanted. You know,
Yeah.
um, and that's what I needed at that moment in my life. I needed somebody to want me. You know, and they knew that because I had told them my story. So that's kind of, they cajoled me into that, you know, and, well, it just, I mean, it snowballed from there. There's a lot of things that just turned crazy. I mean, I was a 16-year, and of course I was in a habit, because the postulants also had a habit. It wasn't a full habit, but we were covered. So, we were modest. We were covered from our head. We had veils, so our head was covered. We were covered from the neck down to the feet, and we wore a skirt and a shirt underneath the habit. So there was no, I mean, I'm prefacing this because I'm going to tell you kind of where I noticed things were wrong. You know,
Mm.
um, there was no way for us to be considered immodest in any way, shape, or form. You know, but what happened was one of my students um, said something about having a crush on me, and so Sister Teresa, that's when Sister Teresa, I feel like, turned on me. um, she started calling me a slut, and um, I wasn't allowed as many privileges as I was before. So I went from, well, I guess maybe like what you said, like now that I'm thinking about it, I went from being the golden child, the child that was going to save Asia, to this slut that was um, tempting these fourth graders,
Oh,
you
jeez.
know.
Yeah.
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 And so I was just like, what in the world? You know, and as far as eating goes, we relied on in the convent itself, we relied on food. We never went, I don't remember ever going grocery shopping, or Sister Teresa ever going grocery shopping. We never had fresh groceries. What we relied on was the parish members bringing, the parishioners bringing us donations. Um, so if there were no donations, there was no food. Now, we were lucky than other places in the order because we were attached to a school. So at least we got one meal because the school gave us free lunch, right? So during the week we would get a free meal anyway. But, after I became the slut, I was no longer allowed in the cafeteria. So eating was not really a possibility anymore, you know.
Oh,
So it was whatever. There was another sister in the house that used to sneak me food. Um, and that's what I subsisted on. So, and I think a lot of the punishments that Sister Teresa gave me, the only reason I was able to endure them was because I was an athlete. I was a level 9 gymnast before I entered the convent. So I think a lot of the physical punishments, like kneeling for 24 hours or whatever, that I was given were only being able to be endured because I was strong when I went in physically. There was, punishments. Anytime a student would talk to me, like, I was still teaching classes, so I don't know how students weren't supposed to talk to me, but even if a student, well, the females were fine, but if a male student would even ask me a question about their homework or whatever, in the hallway, I was tempting them and I was in for punishment.
so
So,
they're creating no-win situations
yes.
for you in order
Yeah.
to punish you.
Right. Right. Um, and at one point, um, I wasn't finished with my postulancy. For the time period that I was in the convent, I should not have even been a novitiate. But they kind of rushed me through the postulancy because what I was told was the longer veil of the postulants, or the longer veil of the novitiates, would make me act more like a nun and less like a slut. So, yeah. So
Wow.
so I was entered into the novitiate early, and that's kind of when I started planning my escape, I guess we could say. And I know Mike was very impressed with my escape story because, basically when I left, what I did was um, the sister. There was only three. I was the only postulant um, in New Jersey. There was another postulant up in Massachusetts, but I was the only postulant in New Jersey. And there was one other sister that had taken vows. She was a full sister there in the house with us. So it was Sister Teresa, that sister, and me. So that sister was in charge of me, and I had told Sister Teresa after they gave me the novitiate that I wanted to leave. I didn't think I had a calling. I wanted to go home, you know. And, I knew that I was going to have to plan an escape again from my parents, but I wanted to go home. And what happened was she locked me in my room. So I was no longer allowed to teach. I was no longer allowed to do anything but be in my room. Like she locked me in my room. And we were on the second story. Like our bedrooms were on the second story.
Now,
And then
how old are you at this point? How long did you?
17.
17. So you've been
Yeah.
there about a year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I told her I wanted to go home. And, she was like, well, no, you still have, a calling that you need to fulfill. And so, she just locked me in my room, and I don't know what the plan was. I don't know what the plan was for me. Um, but the sister that was in charge of me, she brought me downstairs, because I was allowed out of my room only under supervision. So she brought me downstairs, and I was getting a drink of water, and the sister had to go to the bathroom, in an emergency. And what I did was I snuck a coat because it's January, it's the middle of
Mm-hmm.
winter, in I snuck a coat under my habit. Um, because I knew that I was going to leave, but I wanted to know I didn't want to freeze, and I didn't know if I would be able to get any place or if I would have to walk. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Um,
Sure. Yeah.
um, so what I ended up doing was sneaking the coat up of up my habit, like tying it around my waist under my habit, and putting it in my closet, at the very back of my closet when I was in my room. And then one night, I took my habit off. I left the skirt and shirt underneath on, and then put the coat on, and I climbed down the tree outside of my window, and then I walked. And in my 17-year-old mind, I had before I went to the convent, I had a pen pal in Staten Island. And so, and we were in Sayreville, New Jersey, and I walked from the convent to the Verrazano Bridge, and I was like, well, I'm going to walk to Staten Island. I'm going to walk over this bridge. Well,
for those unfamiliar, how many miles are we talking, roundabout?
ooh, it was 4 or 5 miles.
Okay.
In the middle of the night.
In New
Yeah,
Jersey, January,
yeah,
which is a very different beast than a Georgia January.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. I live in Texas now, and yeah.
I'm in Pennsylvania. I'm very jealous of you right now.
But yeah, so I tried to walk across this bridge, and I don't know if anybody knows the Verrazano Bridge, but you don't walk across this bridge, So I got stopped by the police, and the police ended up. I wouldn't tell them where I was coming from.
Thank you for joining us again this week on the Cult of SMMI. If you would like to reach out to me, strangepathwaysmail@gmail.com. Once again, thank you so much for joining us here. Take care of yourselves and each other.